A crisp winter morning blankets Eastern Europe. Snow drifts across the shattered towns of Poland, the ground scarred from years of conflict. It is 1944 and the war in Europe is turning, but what if the unthinkable happened? What if the United States, fresh from D-Day victories in France, suddenly faced the Soviet Union, the Red Army at full strength, stretching from the Urals to the Carpathians? Imagine armies clashing not as allies, but as rivals in a deadly race for supremacy. And this time, there is no turning back. The first signs appear along the Oder River. American reconnaissance planes spot massive Soviet formations, hundreds of tanks, dozens of divisions, prepared for a westward push. Pilots feel the icy wind against their faces as they dodge flak bursts and anti-aircraft fire. Could this really be happening? Whispers one young lieutenant over the radio. Below, U.S. infantry brace in trenches, gripping rifles and watching Soviet artillery shells arc through the sky. Every impact sends clouds of snow and dirt into the air, shaking the earth beneath them. On the Western Front, General Patton receives urgent dispatches. His eyes narrow as maps are spread across the table. We've faced the Germans, and we've faced Japan, but the Soviets. They don't fight the way we've seen before, he mutters. Across the ocean, Churchill and Roosevelt argue over intelligence reports. Moscow's new orders are clear. Seize Berlin before the Allies can consolidate. For the first time, the Americans face a military equal that can match their mobility, firepower, and industrial might. The first clashes erupt in the forests of Poland. Sherman tanks rumble forward, their tracks crunching the frozen ground, while T-34s appear like phantoms through the pines. Machine gun fire rips through the air. An American tank commander shouts orders to his crew as shells explode around them. Left flank. Left flank. Smoke fills the cabin, and a flash of steel shows a Soviet tank rolling over a ridge. Soldiers scream as the line of battle twists into chaos. Every twist in terrain becomes a death trap. And just when the Americans think they have the advantage, hidden Soviet infantry launch flanking attacks, forcing them to retreat through snow-draped villages. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy moves into the Baltic, attempting to cut supply lines to East Prussia. Destroyers slice through icy waters, radar scanning for Soviet patrols. Submarine captains hold their breath as torpedoes glide silently beneath the waves, hunting Soviet convoys. Explosions ripple across the sea as one torpedo finds its mark, but not without cost. Anti-submarine nets ensnare a U.S. sub, forcing an underwater battle of wits in freezing darkness. On board, sailors check instruments, sweat freezing to their brows. Every second feels like eternity.
Back on land, American paratroopers prepare for a daring night raid. They jump from C-47s into forest near Warsaw, landing in snowdrifts with hearts pounding. Stay low. Stay quiet, the sergeant whispers. Below, Soviet troops patrol in pairs, unaware of the silent intruders. But a snapped branch, a flicker of movement, and suddenly, firefights erupt. Bullets tear through pine, grenades arc through the air, and snow hides the fallen. A young soldier writes in his mind, if this war is supposed to be over, it doesn't feel like it now. Air battles rage overhead. P-51 Mustangs dive, cannon spitting fire, as Yak-9 fighters twist and turn with deadly precision. Pilots feel the pull of G-forces as they dodge flak, watching comrades explode in fiery trails across the sky. One American pilot radios in, voice shaking, enemy ahead, 50 tanks below, requesting air support now. Moments later, B-17 bombers arrive, dropping payloads on Soviet positions. Trees are flattened, buildings destroyed, but Soviet troops surge forward, almost as if the snow itself fuels their advance. On the eastern plains, the Soviets unleash the full fury of their artillery. Hundreds of howitzers rain shells, shaking the horizon. American infantry dig in, shivering as the ground trembles. Commanders count casualties, adjusting strategy on the fly. They never stop, mutters a lieutenant, his voice barely audible over explosions. Behind the lines, engineers scramble to repair bridges and rail lines, knowing that logistics will decide who survives the winter. Every missed train, every destroyed bridge, adds hours of delay and piles bodies in the cold snow. In Berlin, intelligence analysts on both sides work furiously. Cipher machines click and clatter. Analysts watch for troop movements, trying to predict the next Soviet push or American counterattack. Tension in the war rooms is palpable. One misread code, one delayed report, could send entire divisions into ambush. Across rivers, through towns, the war becomes a chessboard full of sacrifices and gambits. Yet every piece is human, bleeding, freezing, and terrified. Meanwhile, in Washington, Roosevelt convenes an emergency meeting. Military advisors outline worst-case scenarios: a Soviet armored push into Poland, supply shortages, potential nuclear development rumors. The president listens, eyes narrowing. "We fought hard for freedom," he says. "Now, we defend it not just against tyranny abroad, but against the red tide itself." Newsreels spread to citizens back home, and factories ramp up production, churning tanks, artillery, and aircraft at a furious pace. Workers sweat in assembly lines, knowing each machine they build could save a life on frozen battlefields thousands of miles away. Secret operations take place behind lines. Paratroopers infiltrate Soviet command centers, planting explosives, gathering intelligence, or cutting communication lines. Soviet special forces conduct similar missions, hitting rail yards, airfields, and depots. These silent battles are as deadly as the front lines. Lives are lost in shadows, and the results ripple through entire campaigns. By winter, the first hints of nuclear experimentation enter the equation. Both sides accelerate research. American scientists at secret sites work furiously on the Manhattan Project, while Soviet counterparts attempt to catch up using intelligence and spies. The threat of a single bomb adds tension to every engagement. Officers whisper in trenches, "If they drop it here, everything ends: the cities, the armies, us." In one climactic battle near Vienna, American and Soviet forces collide in a dense urban fight. Tanks crush streets, artillery shells demolish buildings, and snipers pick off soldiers and windows. Civilians flee, trapped in snow and rubble. Each street is a new battlefield, each corner a deadly trap. Commanders coordinate air support, ground troops, and supply convoys simultaneously. Decisions made in seconds determine thousands of lives. Across the frozen plains of Poland, similar scenes unfold. The Americans push forward, but the Soviets counter with armored divisions, artillery barrages, and counterattacks. Night raids, ambushes, and airstrikes happen constantly. Soldiers write in journals, "Every day feels endless. The snow hides no one. Death waits in every shadow." By mid-war, both sides have exhausted millions of men and machinery. Cities are unrecognizable, rail lines destroyed, supply routes overextended. Yet, neither can claim outright victory. Alliances start to fracture. Some American generals push for peace negotiations, while hardliners demand total conquest. Soviet command struggles with overstretched supply lines and bitter winter conditions. The war transforms into a brutal test of endurance, strategy, and human will. Meanwhile, spies in neutral countries feed intelligence to both sides, creating tension in Scandinavia, the Balkans, and the Middle East. American saboteurs sink ships in the Baltic, while Soviet agents disrupt factories in Italy. Global theaters become connected. The conflict is no longer just European. And just when the stalemate seems endless, rumors of an American breakthrough emerge. A massive convoy carrying armored divisions, artillery, and fuel barrels moves silently under cover of darkness. Its destination, Warsaw. If successful, it could tip the balance in favor of the US. Soviet commanders scramble to respond, deploying every reserve unit, calling reinforcements from deep behind lines. Tension grips every soldier. One misstep could mean annihilation.
At the same time, civilians caught between armies struggle to survive. Women, children, and the elderly scavenge ruins for food. Some join partisan groups, sabotaging enemy supply lines. Letters from the front lines tell stories of heroism, loss, and unimaginable hardship. One American soldier writes, "I fight for freedom, yet I see no victory in this snow-covered hell. Every street, every forest, every village is stained with blood." And then, in a twist of strategy, American forces push a new technology forward: early long-range radar detection and experimental jet aircraft. Yaks and P-51s clash overhead in dramatic dogfights that change the dynamic of air support. Both sides adapt, and the war escalates further. New air tactics, kamikaze-style tank raids, and covert missions reshape the battlefield daily. As the conflict stretches in 2 years, attrition dominates. Cities become fortresses. The Soviets learn to use rail networks for rapid deployment, while Americans rely on mobility, coordination, and supply convoys across frozen rivers. Each front is a mix of conventional and guerrilla warfare. Nothing is predictable. Finally, near the conclusion, both sides face exhaustion. Millions of soldiers dead, machinery destroyed, civilian populations devastated. Leaders consider the cost, millions of lives, ruined cities, and a world teetering on the edge. Negotiations are whispered in secret, a mixture of hope and desperation. The war could end in stalemate, in mutual destruction, or in an unforeseen breakthrough. A single tactical genius, a failed supply line, or the use of nuclear weapons could tip the scales. And yet, throughout the entire war, one truth remains: survival depends not just on tanks, planes, or artillery, but on ingenuity, endurance, and human will. Every soldier, pilot, and civilian shapes the outcome. Every twist, every ambush, every daring maneuver matters. History is not predetermined. So now, the question is yours. If the US had faced the Soviet Union in World War II, who would have prevailed? Would technology, strategy, or sheer endurance win the day? Or would the world be changed forever, leaving no victor, only survivors in the frozen ruins of Europe? Subscribe if you like our efforts. Thanks.